Andrew Breitbart.
Andrew Breitbart.
Andrew Breitbart.
Andrew Breitbart. God, what a guy.
Andrew Breitbart.
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 Andrew Breitbart. Andrew Breitbart.
Andrew Breitbart. It was the Clarence Thomas hearing. It changed my life. When I graduated from college, I was waiting tables at a hip restaurant in Venice, California, and after work, I would race home to go watch the Thomas hearings. I wanted him to go down based upon the premise that the media set up, that this guy was a serial sexual harasser and basically a monster among women. I remember Barbara Boxer and Patricia Schroeder and a series of women all wearing red, standing behind Anita Hill, and I wanted to see Clarence Thomas taken down. By the end of the week, in which I watched no evidence come out, it was mystery evidence. Is that you don't understand what it's like to be a woman in the workplace. When the worst thing that came out of it was that in all the years that she was with him, going job to job to job, getting raised, getting promoted, the worst thing that he ever said at one point, allegedly, was he said there's a pubic hair on a Coke can. I remember thinking, this is it? And Ted Kennedy and Joe Biden are asking this man whether or not he's rented pornography or knows who Long Dong Silver is. And I did not understand a world. I couldn't understand what Ted Kennedy, of all people with his background, you know, Lothario, Chappaquiddick, kind of a known, you know, carouser, that this guy had the gall to go after Clarence Thomas. I said, what does he know about the NAACP and the media that they're not going to attack him for being a racist, for going after a man who was raised by his grandparents and who was raised by sharecroppers, who was experiencing the epitome of the American dream? And once I saw the paradigm, and that's why I call it the Democrat media complex, he implicitly knew that his political career was safe from the media for attacking a black man on national television.
This is an opportunity to commemorate our friend Andrew Breitbart. It's hard to believe that it's been 10 years since his untimely death, and we still mourn his passing. I first met Andrew Breitbart at Rush Limbaugh's house, I believe. And we chatted quite a bit, and he pointed out, or made me aware, that he started his career in journalism after witnessing my confirmation. Needless to say, I was very, very humbled by that and never forgotten it. Both my wife, Virginia, and I are very, very appreciative of Andrew as a friend, as a patriot, and personally. He stood up for both of us at various times when, unfortunately, we were being criticized or attacked for whatever reasons. Andrew, unprompted, would go into battle for us, would commit himself to the truth, and we are deeply, deeply grateful for that. But we're also grateful for his life and for all he's done, and for his courage, and for his fortitude, and for his belief in not only righteousness, as he would say in his book, but also simply for being a good person who did the right thing, even when it cost him, and would cost him dearly. But we are deeply appreciative of him. We think it's hard to believe that he passed away a decade ago It's hard to believe that a young man of his energy and talents would be taken away from us. But then again, it's hard to believe that giants like Rush, who introduced us, has also been taken away. And I think that's the case. It seems like the good do indeed pass away young. So I honor him on behalf of myself, my wife, and certainly our country.
I didn't know Andrew Breitbart, but I knew about his work, and now I have opinions about his legacy. And I think the strongest opinion about it that I have about his legacy is that he was a precursor of the moment we now live in. A moment in which Americans, not just conservatives, but Americans of common sense, are looking for leaders that will run towards the challenge instead of try to hide and get good coverage from the New York Times or be applauded by the mainstream media. People that are willing to step forward at a moment of such incredible crisis and important choices to make, and are willing to fight against those that are saying and doing ridiculous things. And Andrew was a precursor of that. He did that before anybody else was doing it. And I think in so doing has empowered an entire new generation of American leaders in every walk of life who, whether they know it or not, are following in his footsteps.
The thing I remember most about Andrew was his loyalty and his commitment to challenge the status quo before it was popular. One of my first introductions to Breitbart was a film that he and Steve Bannon made in 2012 with my good friend David Bossie. It was called Occupy Unmasked. Now, Andrew was ahead of the curve with this movie, just like he always was. He exposed the dangerous radical left-wing movement brewing in America, a movement that would eventually become Antifa. He has been missed, but his spirit lives on in so many today through the America First conservative movement. God's blessings to Andrew's family. We all miss him, but we're grateful for everything that he did for our country.
Hey, it's Tucker Carlson. First, let me say how sad I am to think that it's been 10 years since Andrew passed, both because I'm sad he's gone and because it makes me feel old. 10 years has passed. We were exactly the same age, so it's amazing that it's been a decade. But let me just say, of course, Andrew was a conservative pioneer, a great innovator in media, a wonderful person. All of that will be said. Let me just add my perception, which is that in addition to all of that, Breitbart was one of the single funniest people I've ever met in my life, ever. Not long before he died, we went on a trip, and I remember being in the back of a cab with him. I was dead sober. And he told a story, which is far too crude to repeat here, that was so hilarious. It was the only time in my life that I felt like I was gonna pass out from not breathing. I mean, it was unbelievable. Anyway, he was a truly hilarious person. And that counts, and it's worth remembering.
You know, folks, there's some people who spend their lives making a difference. And they don't know in advance if they're actually going to make a difference, but they follow their dreams, they follow their principles, and they have courage. There's not enough of them, but there are some of them. And in this country, we breed more than most. Maybe it's in the private sector, entrepreneurs and so forth. Maybe it's in the military when people serve and are braver than you can imagine. Whatever the walk of life. And one of those individuals was Andrew Breitbart. Andrew Breitbart, who was adopted by a family. Andrew Breitbart, who started out pretty much as a liberal, who started to listen to Rush Limbaugh, somebody we miss dearly. And then he decided he needed to make a difference for his country. And he did. Smart as can be, a young man, almost self-taught in so many respects, about philosophy, about right and wrong, and about the dangers of the American Marxist movement out there. An early pioneer who used social media, who used the old media against itself, who knew how to draw attention to issues, and who knew how to take on our enemies. He has a tremendous legacy, a tremendous legacy. Breitbart is a household name. It's a fantastic website, and it's got its tentacles in many places, as it should. I could not be more proud of my past association with Andrew and with all the folks now who work at Breitbart and who promote that agenda. A few months before Andrew died, he and I were giving a speech at the same place, Americans for Prosperity of all places. And we were in the green room, although there wasn't really a green room. I was there with my daughter, and we were kidding around. And they had particularly big chocolate chip cookies that looked like pancakes. And I gave my speech. Then I went backstage. I wanted to watch Andrew's speech. I said, what in the world did he take one of those cookies out for? And he went out there, and he spoke about 5 minutes about the cookie. It was hilarious. I don't remember exactly what he said. The audience was falling over itself laughing. And why do I bring this up? Because that's how Andrew Breitbart was. They call him the happy warrior, because he was a happy warrior. I'm not so happy, but he was the happy warrior. Every now and then he'd give me a call. He'd want some advice. We would consult on various issues. Just a very, very decent individual who left this earth too early. But he provides us with an example of a true patriot. This is what I talk about all the time. Use your role, whatever it is. You can be a truck driver, a bus driver, you can be a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, you can be everything in between. It doesn't matter. You have a role in this society. You have a role in your lifetime to make a difference. In little ways and big ways. You never know where it's going to lead. To defend the liberty, the Constitution, and the history of the greatest nation on the face of the earth. For all of us, for your kids and your grandkids, and kids yet born. So of course we remember Andrew Breitbart forever, because he was just that kind of a figure.
For 3 years, they've taken a microscope to you and said you're the worst human beings in the world, yet you clean up after yourself. What they have done from city to city, they're freaks! They're freaks! And they're losing. Because you, the American people, finally stood up to the community organizers. We're winning! We're winning! We're winning! Everyone, put your fingers in the air! We're winning!
Andrew Breitbart has an incredible legacy, a legacy that will live on for a long time. What he's done is so important, and what the people, and many of them I'm speaking to right now, what the people that followed him to keep that legacy going, what they've done is incredible. So I just want to thank all of the folks at Breitbart. I want to thank everybody in the room right now, because you really have done something very important, very special. We have to keep it going. Our country is a different place. In 1 year, it's gone to hell. And we have to change that, and we will change it. So I want to thank Breitbart, and I want to pay my respects up there to Andrew. Great job, Andrew.
Andrew Breitbart's an American hero. Growing up at Fox, I used to follow his swashbuckling ass all over CPAC, watching him kick up dust and cause trouble and inspire everybody with his amazing energy and ideas. And he just had this merry band of pranksters, this entourage around him, creating talent, creating all this change, because throughout his career, he was on offense. Conservatives are almost never on offense. We're always on defense, putting out fires. And he was constantly taking the fight to the left, so ahead of his time, so ahead of the curve. I loved the man. Everybody loved this man. As aggressive as he was such a tender and gentle soul. To know him was to love him, as cheesy as that sounds, but I'm comfortable saying that. Andrew, we remember you. We'll always love you, and just thank you for everything you've done for all of us and the conservative movement, and especially for the United States of America.
Andrew Breitbart, man, what can I say about him other than one of the greats? He's one of those larger-than-life figures like Rush Limbaugh. These are the people that just saw it coming. They saw exactly what was happening in culture. They saw the lies of the left. And it's sad to me that I never got to meet him. I remember one of the first times that I took the stage at CPAC, someone said to me, Andrew Breitbart would have absolutely loved you, and you remind me of him. And I then looked so much deeper into his story, and it mirrors mine in a way that is just incredible, having that awakening and really understanding the evil of Marxist ideology and realizing that you had to fight for it. I think for most people, you're looking around today and you're seeing conservative media pop up all over the place. You're seeing us really fight to win culture in a way that we hadn't fought before, and I think that is Andrew Breitbart's legacy. He did it early on, he did it first, and he said we need to be doing exactly what the other side is doing, but doing it better and creating the space. So I hope that in everything that I do, people realize that I'm honoring his legacy and his foresight.
Hey folks, 10 years, Andrew Breitbart. I don't do a lot of videos, but you gotta come in from the range and kiss the ring on a great man like Andrew Breitbart. I think one of the things I admired most about him was that that liberals would leave dinner with him or an evening out with him and go home and think, and why aren't I on his side? It used to drive them crazy. He was truly a unique combination of, Thomas Nast, Emilia Zola, and Diplo, but at the end of the day, he was sui generis. He was Andrew Breitbart, and he did not like bullies, and he did not abide bullies. I always admired that about him. 10 years, unbelievable. Rest in peace, Andrew Breitbart.
I remember the first time I met Andrew Breitbart, and I thought, who is this guy? Here's a guy that starts fights, he's in the middle of fights, and he's having so much fun. And once I got to know Andrew, I was just overwhelmed by his personality, his generosity, and his fighting spirit. He hired me to edit Big Piece, which was part of the Breitbart empire at the time, and then later merged into Breitbart.com. And Andrew told me from the beginning, he said, I want you to pursue the stories that you want to pursue, that you think are important. Doesn't matter who they're about, it doesn't matter who they calls out, just follow the truth. And Andrew had that spirit about everything. He was generous to his friends, he was generous to his family, and he was generous to his coworkers. Even though he was a larger than life personality, he didn't want to take all the credit and didn't want to be the person focused on anything. Andrew, we love you, we miss you, and this legacy is your legacy.
Hey y'all, I'm Jeffrey Steele, songwriter, Nashville, Tennessee, and I got a call from my dear old friend John Kahn, and he said he had a project for me. I said, what is it? He said, I want to write a song about Andrew Breitbart. And I was like, oh man. And thought about what that might look like, sound like, be like, and John came to me and had some great ideas, and we sat around up in my studio here the other day, and we came up with this song. It's pretty cool. It's called Walk Toward the Fire.
Jumps in the ring, puts on the glove, takes on the world, loves to make you mad while he's making you glad. Who is this guy? Voice in the riot, speaks for the quiet, always defiant, stands for the small, some kind of giant. Whoever he is, we can use a few more like him. Someone who ain't afraid Someone who ain't afraid to fight the fighters, throw the truth at all the liars. See the smoke and the flame get higher. Someone who ain't afraid to fight the fighters, throw the truth at all the liars. See the smoke and flames get higher, and the streams walk towards the fire. Like there's everything to lose, walk towards the fire. Who is this guy?
CPAC has got to go. Behave yourself. 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 You are freaks and animals. You're freaks and animals. Behave yourself. Behave yourself. Behave.
Racist, sexist, anti-gay, right-wing bigots, go away! Racist, sexist, anti-gay, right-wing bigots, go away! Racist, sexist, anti-gay, right-wing bigots, go away! Racist, sexist, anti-gay, right-wing bigots, go away!
Behave yourself. Learn to behave yourself. Stop raping people. Stop raping people. Stop raping. Stop raping people. Stop raping the people.
Andrew Breitbart was a hero. And I had, the first time I met Andrew Breitbart was at a meeting of people who were very, very concerned about what was going on across the country. And each one of these people were very intelligent and had something to say. And then Andrew Breitbart, when it came around to him, he started talking, and I was amazed at how clear he was, how eloquent he was, how passionate he was, and how much fun he was. Just the way he expressed himself was just touched everybody in the room, and gave us good cheer as well, because he had such a positive energy. Anyway, afterwards I went up to him and I said, Andrew, you know, you're a really special guy and very important at this time when we're fighting a battle on so many fronts. And he said, John, I can't wait. I can't wait to get in their faces, to get in the battle of it. You know, and I remember those words very well as I saw what he did from that moment, the amazing the confrontation. He took on the confrontation with, let's give you an example, when he went down to the sit-in in the Wall Street, you know, Occupy Wall Street, this thing, and he goes up and he gets in front of these people who were nothing but an angry mob, and he stood up and he said, "Stop raping! Stop raping!" And that's all he said. And the reason why he said that was because that was what got in the papers. He wanted to make, put the finger on that aspect of this destruction that they were creating there. And he was effective. He was so clever about the media in that way, you see. He would go up to people carrying signs and ask them if they understood what the sign was that they were carrying, knowing that they were given that sign a half an hour before and told and paid to get out in front of people to represent this lie that they were trying to bring forth. Anyway, he was very clever. He was a wonderful man, a good dad, a good husband, and a good friend, a wonderful friend to all of us. So much love to you for putting the spotlight on this remarkable person, this hero, this American hero. God bless.
James O'Keefe here with Project Veritas. Just wanted to say a few words about Andrew Breitbart, and there's so much I could say. The Wall of Shame at Project Veritas never would have been the Wall of Shame without Andrew Breitbart. Actually, Andrew Breitbart, and I believe it was Alex Marlow, came up with the concept of retracto, the correction alpaca. I was arrested in New Orleans 2010, and journalists jumped to wild conclusions about my motives and intentions, as they often do. They were saying I wiretapped a senator, that I was bugging phones. All of this was retracted. And one time I was in a hotel room, this was January, February of 2010, and it was very late at night, and Andrew and I were laughing probably until we cried when he said there should be a mascot for these retractos, and we'll call him Retracto, and it should be an alpaca. And now Veritas, 10, 11 years later, has gotten some 300, 400 retractions and corrections and articles questioning our ethics. None of this would have happened without Andrew Breitbart. And there's a lot more that I could say about Andrew. Media warrior, amazing man, someone who knew how to work with the media and simultaneously reform the media. I miss him a lot. Hopefully, in our work, Andrew Breitbart lives on in spirit.
I can't believe that it's been 10 years since Andrew passed away. That day was one of the worst days of my life, like it was for a lot of people who knew Andrew. Andrew was an unbelievable human being. I mean, forget about the impact that he had on the conservative movement, revitalizing it, reestablishing that at the center of the conservative movement is culture, that culture is upstream of politics. It was his energy, his vivaciousness, the fact that he brought everybody together. He would have conversations with anyone. He'd just be walking down the street and suddenly he'd be caught in a 20-minute conversation with some rando while they were both riding rollerblades. Like, that's the kind of stuff that Andrew would do. He was just a ball of joy. Andrew was just a lot of fun, and he happened to be just an extraordinary fighter, right? Somebody who was willing to get into the battles and punch and defend people he thought were worth defending, supremely loyal, a wonderful person in every way. I miss him pretty much every day. He had a formative impact on me. Frankly, I think that Daily Wire would not exist without Andrew Breitbart. I think a lot of us in the conservative movement wouldn't be what we are without Andrew Breitbart.
Hi, this is Governor Ron DeSantis. It's hard to believe that it's been 10 years since Andrew Breitbart's passing, but it's easy to see how his legacy has lived on. Breitbart saw the future of America heading into a new type of conservatism that put America first and that fights for her future by beating the left, not by surrendering to the left. Breitbart was a visionary who saw not just the potential of the internet, but the potential for using the web to educate his fellow citizens about the dangers of leftism and exposing the misdeeds of leftists. He was one who believed in freedom of thought and expression, and one who saw the descent of the corporate legacy media outlets into factories for concocting partisan narratives, and one who knew that we needed a new platform for freedom to thrive. Andrew left behind a legacy that lives on because of the culture he created, a culture that was ingrained in his followers, his writers, and his loved ones. We're all here today honoring Andrew Breitbart because he had the courage of his convictions and because he made a difference.
I met Andrew Breitbart in 2002 on the USS Ronald Reagan. How fitting. It was a year after the attack on the World Trade Center. And you can imagine the patriotism that was brewing in our nation. It was overflowing in Andrew. We became fast friends. I learned that he was instrumental in creating the Huffington Post and Drudge Report and working with those. And a couple of years later, Andrew shared with me his dream of creating big Hollywood, to create a platform for conservatives that are in Hollywood so they can have a voice that's needed. Andrew Breitbart was the Patrick Henry of today. He built an empire, and his friends and people that have his legacy going forward. Breitbart has become the top news organization in the nation. Many people try to put it down, but let me tell you something. Andrew was a guy that was uncompromising in his search for the truth. He looked for the truth in things. He did not try to sensationalize, nor did he try to propagandize. And that's what makes, I think, the left terrified. Andrew left us too soon. You know, you see some of those bright, shining comets that fly across those stars that burn out. His brief 40 years, he created a legacy that will last on. And hopefully, this great country is much better off because of Andrew Breitbart, my dear friend.
You want a unity speech? I'll give you a unity speech. I don't care who our candidate is, and I haven't since the beginning of this. I haven't. Ask not what the candidate can do for you. Ask what you can do for the candidate. And that's what the Tea Party is. We are there to confront them on behalf of our candidate. I will march behind whoever our candidate is, because if we don't, we lose. There are two paths. There are two paths. One is America, and the other one is Occupy. One is America, the other one is Occupy. And I don't care. Along the way, and I'm not a candidate, I'm never going to be a candidate, I'm just a goofball from Los Angeles who wears goofy shoes, promised people I would shave, didn't, promised people I'd take a shower, I got too caught up talking to everybody, and here I am, kind of a mess, but kind of excited to be here. Because over the last 3 years, I've realized that the Republican Party and the conservative movement is not what ABC and CBS puts on the screen. They try to portray you in the worst possible light. And when I walk through CPAC, or I travel the United States to meet people in the Tea Party who care, black, white, gay, and straight, anyone that's willing to stand next to me to fight the progressive left, I will be in that bunker. And if you're not in that bunker because you're not satisfied with this candidate, more than shame on you, you're on the other side.
Andrew Breitbart. God, what a guy. I was young in my career at Fox News when I first met Andrew. He contacted me, and it was in the context of I was doing reporting on Acorn. Remember that whole thing? And I was getting tons of blowback from Media Matters and people like that, and he knew it. And so he called me up, and he said, I want to talk to you. He's like, you're amazing. Gave me lots of encouragement. Gave me nice, compliments, which you need to hear when you're getting beaten down. And he knew that. And he just wanted to encourage me to keep going, to not listen to the haters, and actually to try to kind of enjoy the haters, right? To take it as a sign you're on to a good story, right? That the mainstream will either downplay or ignore or misrepresent. And man, was he right. So we went on to become quite friendly, and he would call me all the time, or I would call him, and he would just encourage me, when the sort of blank storm was raining down on me, he would always reach out, and I always appreciated it. And I think when I think back on his legacy, I see him a little the way I see Trump, in that Trump's greatest gift to the right half of the country was teaching them how to fight. And Andrew Breitbart was doing that long before Trump came along, and really effectively. And really was sort of the godfather of so many people in the conservative movement now, right? Ben Shapiro, Greg Gutfeld, and in a way, me too. It's not that he hired me, it's just that he helped influence me and helped me keep going when the haters tried to stop me. So I'll always remember him fondly. He was gone too soon. I remember the pain upon hearing that he had left us and just not really being able to believe it, because he was a larger-than-life figure. And I, for one, will always be grateful to him.
Andrew Breitbart's legacy to public affairs, debate and politics did not just extend to America. No, it crossed the pond here at the height of my battle against the British establishment to demand that we had a referendum on regaining our independence from the European Union. Breitbart UK came along, gave me support when no other media outlet from the mainstream would do so. It made a big difference, and the morning after that result in 2016, I said we couldn't have done it without Breitbart, and I meant it, and for that, I shall be eternally grateful.
I remember it was 2009. I was giving speeches in front of large Tea Party crowds from Florida to Washington, D.C. And I can remember at the time thinking that I was a pretty good communicator of conservatism. But then I saw Andrew take the stage, and man, he blew me away. He blew the crowd away. Just the way he stood on stage holding up a cell phone and telling the audience that that was everything that they would ever need to investigate corruption and call out bad leadership in Washington, D.C. I'm blessed to have had the chance to meet him, and every day as Breitbart News Entertainment editor, working side by side with people who knew him best. What a great legacy to continue.
The thing about Andrew that I always say is it didn't matter if you were, at that point, Bill O'Reilly, or if you were the head of Schenectady College Republicans. He had the same amount of time for you. And I actually met Andrew. Funny enough, I never worked for Andrew, but I was one of the first, I think, 5 writers at Big Hollywood. I remember John Nolte, Ben Shapiro, I think Adam Baldwin was there. There were a handful, anyone I'm forgetting, but I heard him on the Dennis Miller Show, which I had to pirate because it wasn't available in my locale, and heard him talking about Big Hollywood, and
I called him up, and he spoke with me for about 45 minutes. And I was just a touring club comic at that point, and he gave me a shot, and then he ended up being the first man to RSVP at my wedding. To know him was to love him, and it's one of those people who not only was lost too soon, but I always wonder what his influence personally would have been had he, still been around. The guy changed me a lot, changed who I was, and is one of the reasons that I have any platform that I actually do have. And I genuinely, a lot of times people say, oh, I miss this person, but it's just something they say. On a day-to-day basis, I would tell you that at least several times a week, something comes up where I say, I wish that I could have heard Andrew's take on that, or I wish Andrew was here for this. And I can't say that about a lot of people.
Andrew Breitbart was a remarkable patriot, a man of great vision, somebody who galvanized the conservative movement and established an institution that was at the cutting edge of doing the kind of investigative reporting, the kind of hard-nosed reporting that really mattered. He's deeply missed. He was just a wonderful person, and somebody that so many of us look to as a leader, and it's a great honor for me to be able to speak well of Andrew Breitbart.
My goal is to destroy the New York Times and CNN, and I'm talking not just them or New York, that they would take our criticism and our acting as their checks and balances, the fifth estate on the fourth estate, and that they would correct themselves, that they would become better citizens. They've chosen not to go that route, and I really believe, and I'm committed to, the destruction of the old media guard.
I admire your opportunistic.
And the goal, and it's a very good business model. But I believe that from that something better will come, because nothing could be better than a group of people that collectively sneer and think that it's a obvious joke that when people want to have redress for their grievances, that they're called teabaggers and everybody has a great laugh at it. That we have to defend ourselves for having this conversation is despicable from people who grant Hugo Chavez a place to have a conversation. Ahmadinejad, listen to him. What does he have to say? We are the worst people in the world. That's actually what they say on Olbermann, on MSNBC. We are the worst people in the world, night in and night out. Yet the Al-Qaeda is granted civil liberties, yet Ahmadinejad is granted the ability to speak at the United Nations in New York City. I go, the media class is the wall that we have to climb over in order for our voices to be heard. Once our voices are heard, then democracy will happen.
Hello, I'm Vice President Mike Pence, and it really is my honor to be a part of this tribute to the life and legacy of my friend, Andrew Breitbart. You know, I met Andrew back when I was a member of Congress, and I was amazed at his energy, his creativity, his love of the conservative movement and this country. I actually had the privilege of going to his home in Los Angeles, and while his children were seated on the floor, we sat there at the counter in his kitchen, he with that ever-present laptop open. We talked about this country, we talked about the conservative movement, and all the while he would turn and make sure that the best real-time information was on Breitbart in those early days. In a very real sense, Andrew Breitbart changed the media landscape forever, and he shaped the conservative movement like few that have come before. And I just know that Andrew Breitbart would be so proud of Breitbart's growth and expansion in the years since his untimely passing in 2012. From its dominance on the internet to the radio airwaves to social media and everywhere in between, Breitbart is holding conservatives accountable and calling out the radical left at every turn. You know, Andrew Breitbart left an indelible mark on the conservative movement and on the strong relationship between the United States and our most cherished ally, Israel. And his legacy lives on through all of those that have been impacted by his work and his vision, and through the incredible team at Breitbart today. I look forward to watching as Breitbart continues to be a disruptive force in American politics and a voice for conservative values. That's the best tribute that we can pay to to Andrew Breitbart.
You know, when I think of Andrew Breitbart, what a force of nature. I mean, in many ways, he had the same energy of Donald Trump. I'll never forget, I'm on the radio one day, and Andrew was at I think it was the press conference with a laptop of Andrew, for Anthony Weiner. I forget what it was. He took over the entire press conference, gets up there, he starts answering the press's questions, then comes off the podium, calls into my radio show, and he had a confidence, he had courage, he had strength, he had everything that you would want every conservative to have. And boy, he's missed. We need more Andrew Breitbarts. Anyway, we're thinking of him and his family, and God bless him for the work that he did.
A man like Andrew Breitbart comes along once in a generation, if that. There's an old saying that courage is contagious, and that was I think the center of gravity of Andrew's being. He was a genius in new media. He was an inspired speaker, but at the end of the day, he was a leader, and he led by his courage. Andrew Breitbart would never back down. He believed in his family, his community. Most importantly, he believed in his country. He believed in the United States of America, and he supported it every day. Every day of his life was a fight. People came after Andrew and tried to tear him apart, tried to destroy him. But because of his courage, because of his leadership, he led the way for many, many, many years, and really was the foundational element of the fight that we've got today. Andrew was an extraordinary individual, a great man, and a great leader. It seems like only yesterday he passed away, but he's been an inspiration for all of us and will be an inspiration for generations to come.
We could all use a little Andrew Breitbart right now. You know, he was such a happy warrior, but he had a fearlessness when it came to the liberal media, and he continued to push to hold powerful interests accountable. The conservative movement followed him and continues to follow him even now. We need to remember back to what he would be saying to us and make sure that we're following that same path. Prayers going out to the Breitbart family, and thank you for all you supported him in doing for the conservative movement.
As movement conservatives, we all live in the legacy of Andrew Breitbart. There are huge figures of our fight for freedom. When you think back to Ronald Reagan, you think back to Rush Limbaugh, and then you got to think about Andrew Breitbart and the way he taught us to understand the left and take them on. War, win. Our ideas are better. Be bold, be unapologetic and unafraid. There is no Donald Trump and the movement we see today without what Andrew Breitbart did to fight for America. God bless him.
I had the privilege of working side by side with Andrew Breitbart at Breitbart.com. Literally, our desks were next to one another. And we would spend hours debating, discussing, joking, comparing music, talking about ideas. And we also worked together in the field. Andrew rounded me up one night and we went down to downtown LA to the Occupy Wall Street protest right before it was rounded up by police. It was a tense situation. It could have turned violent at any moment and we could have been arrested. Andrew went up to radical activists, some of whom were dressed head to toe in black with masks and everything, and he started asking them about what they believed. Not only did that get great responses, great quotes for our articles, but he was also able to engage them in a conversation, in a debate. And that's really something that's missing from journalism today, the ability to speak to people with completely different views. Andrew inspired thousands of people across the country with his philosophy of citizen journalism, which basically held that if you just do the legwork, if you use the camera that's on your phone and you record what you see at public meetings and you talk to elected officials, you can do a better job than the establishment media journalists who are there to push a particular narrative. And that example, that philosophy, still inspires us today, inspires many other people. And I feel his presence every day in everything we do at Breitbart.com. Andrew is sorely missed, but he's still very much a part of our lives.
I want the Democratic Party and liberalism, I want my professors at Tulane and the humanities departments to know that they tried to brainwash me to side with liberal Democrats in order to attack those that disagreed. And I want my legacy to be that they know that they screwed with the wrong guy.
I'm Alex Marlowe, editor-in-chief of Breitbart News, and every day on our radio show, Breitbart News Daily, we play a clip of Andrew Breitbart where he says that he hopes his legacy is that they mess with the wrong guy, they being the establishment, the institutional left. And I think 10 years after his death, I think it's pretty crystal clear that they did mess with the wrong guy. I'm not just the editor-in-chief of Breitbart, I was Andrew's first employee. He hired me when I was a 21-year-old UC Berkeley student, and what I saw in Andrew was just incredible vision. I saw that he was uniquely positioned to be the guy to lead the conservative movement into the digital age, the guy who could create an empire with his keyboard, with his fingertips. And it wasn't just because he had this great news nose, which he did, but he also was prescient in terms of his tactics. He was the first guy to understand and preach that the culture's upstream from politics and not the other way around, that the conservative movement needed to win the culture war battles first and then the political victories would follow. We all agree on this today, but he was the first guy pointing it out. He was also relentless about pointing out that the left actually wants to destroy us. They're at war with us, and having cocktails with them is generally a fool's errand. And he also saw that the right also needed humor. We needed to use mockery, we need to use ridicule, we need to have fun skewering the left and not just get righteously indignant, though he was that from time to time as well. It's truly been an honor to be the leader of the Breitbart virtual newsroom for so many years, but it was also a privilege to get to know Andrew so well, starting at the nascent stages of the company and seeing it to where it is today, and working with some of the best journalists in the business who've consistently put themselves at the center of not just the culture wars, but the culture itself. So Andrew, we love you, we miss you so much, but we're so grateful that you were able to impart so much wisdom and so many pieces of advice and tools that we can use to this day. And we hope every single day that we make you proud. Love you, brother.
Andrew Breitbart was a giant of the conservative movement, a champion of truth, and a media trailblazer. He never backed down from a fight and never allowed the left to censor or cancel him. Andrew understood that politics is downstream from culture. And that's exactly why so many of us are fighting against critical race theory and what the left is trying to do to our kids. It's fitting that 10 years after his tragic death, one of the preeminent conservative media outlets still bears his name. Andrew's legacy and contribution to this country, party, and movement lives on.
I do remember Andrew Breitbart quite well. It was a long time ago. He flew up to see me when I was, I don't know, kind of in the beginning and flying high in the radio business. He flew up from LA, and we talked and walked for well over an hour, and he was so full of manic energy. Truthfully, I hardly said a word. Andrew did all the talking. He was non-stop Andrew, full of excitement for the conservative movement. Wonderful man, full of energy. Unfortunately, I did never see him again, and only after he passed away did I contact folks in the Andrew Breitbart circle. Wait a minute. There was another time I went to LA and we all went to a film studio for a private screening through Andrew, and I don't remember the movie. Then I was at the funeral, and of course I'm on Breitbart, the website, every day. It's the best website out there. It doesn't stop. It's the leading website of mine for these times that we are in. Amazing, well done, good job, and my respects and hat off to Andrew Breitbart.
I first met Andrew when I was just an inexperienced college student trying to make my way in the world. And luckily for me, I saw him speak at a conference, and he made my path into the conservative movement a little clearer, and went on to get to know him in the conservative media movement. I always look forward to his clashes with protesters who he fearlessly approached and confronted, sometimes on his rollerblades, and he inspired me and so many others to be bold, brave, and to seek the truth while so many tried to bury it. I will always be grateful for his encouragement, example, and guidance. We miss you, Andrew, and think of you all the time.
You know, over the years, this was often the shot you saw Andrew, myself, sitting on a set, talking about the news of the day, the issues that matter to the American people. Now, let's actually do it the way Andrew preferred, in a little more casual fashion. So Andrew was often on the news, in the news, and you saw us on set from time to time. But let me tell you a little behind the scenes. The night before the Anthony Weiner pictures came out. We were on set with Sean Hannity, and Sean's one of the biggest Boy Scouts in the world in many ways. Andrew kept trying to show him the picture as we were sitting there. He had it on his phone. Come on, Sean, look at it. And Sean wouldn't take a look. He didn't want to see a picture of Anthony Weiner's wiener. Then we go over to Studio L, famous bar, at least for us over at Fox, where we used to hang out, Langan's Irish Pub in reality. And while I run off to the bathroom, Andrew shows the picture to my girlfriend at the time. Okay, Andrew, the only man in the world who could show my girlfriend a picture of another man's penis and get away with it. See, Andrew knew how to fight and lead a fight. He knew how to be a big figure, but he had such an even bigger imprint because he was fighting for people, for America. He was awake while a lot of people were just going woke, which you see what's going on right now. Andrew was special because we were all a team without being a team. We were all in line, and it was on basic principles that made this country great. He wanted to have open conversation. We had open conversation. What we did in Philadelphia when we went out there to stand up for the Tea Party movement, and in 100-degree heat in the open sun, took to the stage. Andrew, Charles Payne, Deneen Borelli, Janks Morton, Steve Bannon, myself, so many others who stepped out to say this is about Americans speaking their mind, right there next to the Liberty Bell. Andrew believed that we should talk more, engage more, debate more. But he also stood up for the people who weren't always, well, accepted. Give you another story. We're walking out of the Marriott one night off Connecticut Avenue during CPAC. And at that time, there was a big debate over Go Proud being allowed to go to CPAC, the gay Republican group. I can tell you my boss was probably not too happy with me the next morning. Andrew and I went over to the Go Proud party. We had a great time. We partied. We let them know that we agree on so many things that we can all fit into this party together. Diversity, real diversity. Now, a lot of pressure was put on. Guess what? They were at CPAC. Those are just some of the anecdotes, but this is where it gets a little hard. It's 10 years later, and I still miss my friend. I still miss the warrior. Yeah, that was important to many people around the country. He had such an effect on us, on all of us. But I miss the guy that I could sit around with and have a drink or not have a drink, that laugh, to talk about everything. One day we literally sat around and talked music in a conference room in Sirius with my boss, Dave. That, by the way, led to conversations that eventually led to Breitbart News on Sirius. There's so much to his story that may never be told. Many of us hold close. But we will never forget Andrew, and we'll always be here for his family, because we are all family.
We are the majority in this country. And the mainstream media has used smoke and mirrors and those funny clown mirrors in order to create the perception that the minority is the majority, and the majority is not just the minority, but a bad, racist, homophobic, all those buzzwords that they learned in their freshman orientation class at Wesleyan are used as weapons to try to destroy you and to intimidate you, to not speak up and to speak your mind. And your days of doing this are over. Thank you. It's not your business model that sucks, it's you that sucks.
In 2009, the House voted to defund a corrupt community organizing group called Acorn. That vote was an electrifying victory for our movement. And behind it was a brave, bold pioneer at the intersection of politics, culture, and the media, Andrew Breitbart. Here's the truth about Andrew. He was a game changer. He had a unique ability to change the world by changing the way you thought about things. Andrew was also a truth seeker. He worked relentlessly to expose the truth where he saw lies and to expose those in power who perpetuated those lies. We learned how to fight fake news effectively from Andrew. He proved that one man could make a difference against the media's fake narratives. And that scares the left, which is why big tech wants to silence us today. It's wrong, and it's getting out of control. A Republican majority will fight for big tech accountability and for the open arena of ideas, just as Andrew fought for them. Andrew was a patriot who loved this country. The legacy he leaves behind is immense. It's hard to believe it's been 10 years since he's passed. Thankfully, his legacy lives on in Breitbart News, in its fantastic staff, and in the hearts of every member of our movement.
Hello, everybody at Breitbart. This is Dennis Prager, and it's the 10th anniversary, it's hard to believe, of Andrew's passing. The loss to America and the conservative movement is prodigious, as you well know. So, very briefly, I met Andrew about 2 or 3 times. I had him on my radio show at least once, and we met on other occasions. So I'm afraid to say this because it sort of sounds self-aggrandizing. It's the last thing I want to sound, but I want to be honest. Whenever we met, he would compliment me on having influenced his thinking. And I only mention that to tell you what type of person he was. That the man of that stature would have that as his message to me when we met. Gives you an idea of his humility as well as his character. So I just thought I'd note that because it meant something to me at the time, to be perfectly honest. That Breitbart continues his work is obvious. I love you guys. I think you're one of the most important in the organizations in the fight for the survival of the American idea. So may, as Jews say, may his memory be a blessing to all of us.
Hi, this is Governor Greg Abbott. This year is the 10-year anniversary of the passing of Andrew Breitbart. Andrew's influence on the conservative movement is unmistakable, and his legacy remains strong to this day. He was a tireless warrior for the conservative cause, a seeker of the truth, and a trailblazer. He gave Americans an alternative to the left's legacy media institutions through Breitbart.com, Big Government, and his other publications. Andrew's ideas, his philosophies, his news sites now reach millions of people every single day. But what really made Andrew special was his ability to connect people, inspire them, and give them an opportunity to succeed. Andrew's influence is still seen today anytime you watch conservative news media, go to a political rally, or read the latest updates on Breitbart.com. He was a conservative icon, a friend to many, an inspiration to millions more.
It's been 10 years since Andrew passed away. And I'm just sitting here thinking about how much of a rodeo clown he was. You know, when a bull was charging after someone, he would step out there and wave his arms and get the bull to chase him instead, so the other person could, feel comfortable going about what they needed to do. And that's what he did for me. That's what he did for countless other people who have come up to me and talked to me about him over the last 10 years. And I think that's really, you know, what he did for our movement for liberty, right? We have so many people now who can fight back and become the media, you know? And they fight back and they credit Andrew with being an inspiration to them for the way that they're fighting back. With me personally, you know, I was under attack and media were attacking me. Andrew stepped in and gave me a platform to fight back from just because he thought it was the right thing to do. And 10 years later, here we are, using that same platform to give people in Mexico who are, you know, under the thumb of Mexican cartels. And we give them a platform to fight back from. And pretty much every team at Breitbart's doing the same kind of thing. They're bringing a platform to people who need to have their voices heard. So the role that Andrew played cannot be understated, not only in my life, countless other people's lives, but I think for our movement as a whole. And deeply missed. It's hard to believe it's been 10 years.
Andrew Breitbart was the most loyal friend that you could have in this industry, on and off the public stage. I mean, he's the godfather of digital conservative media. One of my favorite stories, and there are so many, like the time when he accidentally crashed Anthony Weiner's press conference. That was one of the most punk rock things to happen in politics. It was during a company meeting, though, in D.C., and Andrew asked if anybody wanted to go on this lunchtime field trip to Media Matters offices. And the late Mike Flynn, who headed up Big Government, he and I both raised our hands because we were the troublemakers, and of course we wanted to do this. And Mike said that we could ask for their 990 form. So off we went. I was given the job of recording the whole thing. Another staff member drove the car, and Andrew began screaming, "Stop, stop the car!" And then he jumped out in the middle of the street, and he ran across the street with Mike and I tailing him. Andrew had seen David Brock, the head of Media Matters, just walking down the street with some of his lackeys, and he wanted to get to him before Brock got inside the Media Matters office building and their offices on the upper floors. And Brock's expression when he first saw Andrew barreling down the sidewalk towards him at full speed, it went from total incredulity to recognition and then to pure horror. And Andrew chirped out, "Hi, David, how you doing?" And we all ran to the elevators where we had a standoff, and we were all out of breath from running, and Andrew blocked the doors and acted all casual while the elevator alarm went off, and Brock hid in the corner behind his lackeys. Mike asked for the 990. Somebody finally brought it down, and then Andrew looked over it like he was this building inspector, like, yes, everything seems in place here, very good. And then we left. He gave conservatives a blueprint for dealing with the left in this new era. And he was a cultural and political patent. He coined the phrase, "Politics is downstream from pop culture." And he encouraged the fearlessness with which I approach my work. Encouragement that I remember still even today. And there's never gonna be anybody like Andrew Breitbart. And I'm grateful to have lived in a time when I not only got to know, but work for somebody who was so instrumental to American history. He's really missed today.
I just want to say that if you want college students to understand your campaign, you're going to actually have to follow through with how open-minded you say you're being.
Where's the question? What's the question?
Well, I was going to ask something, but I feel that you're not going to listen to what I have to say. Well, my question was originally about the diversity stuff, and then you guys just started talking in the middle of what I was saying.
I understand the language, and you're implying that I'm racist. Okay? And that is what you are, that is going to be the sum total of your education as you go out there, and you're not going to be able to make anything. And that's what I graduated with my American Studies degree, the ability to judge other Americans as not being sufficiently tolerant because they didn't agree with the left's definition of tolerance. And I'm telling you this, is that you need to understand what multiculturalism is and what political correctness is. And it is cultural Marxism. And it is the translation of Marxist theory from, instead of the haves versus the have-nots. It didn't work in this country. So they created the oppressor versus the oppressed. And so they pitted people in the name of diversity, where they pit Hispanics against each other. Do you know what La Raza is? Do you know what the Reconquistador movement is? It is a racist movement in this country. What about the new Black Panthers, who are supported? They're racist. And the definition of racism is only white people can be racist because black and Hispanics can't be. That is malarkey. They have you thinking in terms of race. They have you thinking in terms of race. Everything is race. There was a world before this that was created. The buildings that were made here were made by people who didn't graduate their colleges obsessed with race. They learned through math. They learned through science how to improve. I'm answering. You had your statement. You had your statement, and I am answering it. You do not interrupt me. This educational system is going to fail you. You will not be able to invent a widget, and you certainly won't be able to build it in this country anymore. They have ruined. I am the ultimate example. I graduated from college believing exactly as you believe, and I walked in from the theoretical world into the real world and realized if I wanted to put rice on the table and pay for my rent, I better get out of this victimhood mentality, and I did.
Hello, everybody. I am honored to be able to participate in remembering the great Andrew Breitbart. While I never actually met Andrew face to face, I feel like I know him. I got my start in politics writing for Breitbart.com in the spring of 2012, only about a month and a half after Andrew Breitbart suddenly passed away. Now, Joel Pollack, who worked right for Andrew, was one of the first people to actually believe in me and give me a platform on Breitbart.com, which really helped catapult the entire organization of Turning Point USA and now our podcast and our radio program and all the positive things that we are doing. At almost every single Lincoln Reagan Day dinner I visit, almost every single grassroots activist that I talk to, they all repeat the phrase that politics flows downstream from culture. Andrew coined that phrase, and Andrew was so adamant that conservatives start to become more serious and focused on fighting the culture war. Andrew was the first person to really take seriously holding people accountable in face-to-face interactions. Andrew was one of the first people to go up to protesters' lines and actually confront them in a way that was almost unheard of to date. Andrew Breitbart started the whole generation of conservatives that you see on television now, including myself and my very good friend Alex Marlowe. And then, of course, the impact that Breitbart.com has had over the last couple years and especially the last decade. The conservative movement, the modern conservative movement, I would argue, was founded by a couple people. But honestly, the person who is able to lay claim to this new digital, entrepreneurial, conservative movement is Andrew Breitbart. Andrew Breitbart saw the flow of information happening before anybody else. He saw the need for grassroots journalists to tell compelling and cutting-edge stories, and we miss Andrew. And even though I never had a chance to get to know him or meet him personally, we keep his legacy going every single day at Turning Point USA and here on our podcast and our radio show. So God bless Andrew Breitbart's family, and we're going to keep his legacy alive. God bless you guys.
Guys, a decade ago, Andrew Breitbart started the original pushback on the Democrat narrative. He realized that conservatives needed their own outlets to express their opinion and get away from the insanity of the media that's dominated by the left. We got to remember that, and we got to fight the way that he fought and continue this movement forever so that we continue to have a voice into the future.
Andrew Breitbart quite literally changed my life. When I met him, I had all sorts of different career plans and other things. I was going to go work elsewhere in the media. He inspired me. There was that fire in the belly, that fight back mentality, a righteous indignation that was very much like a police officer running towards the gunfire or a firefighter running into a burning building, that inspired me to join Breitbart News Network. And part of why I work here is because he taught us how to fight back. The most important thing about Andrew, I think, was that he understood that we are in a war. He articulated the two sides of it, what we're up against and what we believe in versus what they believe in. And most importantly, even more than all of that, is that he understood how to win and he taught us how to fight. And I'll never forget my friend Andrew Breitbart, and I can't believe it's been 10 years since he's passed away.
Hello, this is Mike Pompeo. It's great to be here today to celebrate the life of Andrew Breitbart. He was a seminal voice in the conservative media throughout his entire career. It's an honor to know that this columnist, who founded the site that bears his name, and whose fearless work ensured that the American people received the whole truth, not some fantasy, not some narrative, but the real truth that they deserved to hear. It's been almost a decade since Andrew has passed. We miss him in the same way we did in the months and immediate years after his passing. But his legacy lives on, not only in the site that he launched, but in the journalists and writers that he inspired, in the movement that he helped build, and in the conservative movement that he helped to revitalize. It's an honor to be part of honoring his legacy by continuing the essential work that he was engaged in for his entire life. The conservative idea, truthful speech, and the free and open exchange of ideas. Together we'll all do this. We must stay at it with the exact same spirit of courage that he displayed throughout his entire life.
Incredible, hard to believe, a decade. Andrew Breitbart, you are sorely missed. Although I worked as national security editor for your company, I never got to meet you, and I regret that. But your influence on me and on this, the greatest nation on God's green earth, is undeniable. I've told as many people as I can around the world that they need to read your book. Righteous Indignation is mandatory reading. You explain why you fought, and for me, it can be boiled down to one thing: bullies. You hated bullies. You were a true warrior for justice, and the thing that motivated you was injustice. Thank you for doing what you did for this nation. I know you're looking down on us and smiling, because we who love this nation have already won, thanks to you.
Hey, Andrew, you weigh in here. What do you feel? Do you think this guy should go away for life?
Well, the real question here is, who made off with all the money?
What? Are you weakening your nipples?
One of the greatest things about Red Eye was Andrew Breitbart coming on. He was one of the first guests. I think he was on the very first show. And he was always interested in doing something that no one else would do. He, like me, was in love with the 1970s, with Mike Douglas and Merv Griffin and Dinah Shore. He saw these talk shows as something dangerous or weird or abnormal. And so he always tried to go to the extra mile to make everybody feel uncomfortable. And he succeeded every time he was on the show.
So I was fortunate enough to go on a trip with Andrew, his son Samson, and John Kahn, and a few other people to Texas to Ride to Recovery, which was this amazing ride for veterans, wounded vets, all riding across Texas. So we get down there and, Andrew's pumped, because if anybody knew Andrew, the veterans, our heroes, our warriors, this was just everything to him. So to go down there and be there was the greatest. So we're there, and we're not riding in it, we're just in the follow van. And we're riding along, and it's amazing, and we're watching, and Andrew's he's loving every minute of it. And he speaks up, and he says, "Stop the van, stop the van. I have to get out there. I want to be amongst them. I want to ride with our guys and our gals. I mean, I've got to be in there. I got to be in it. I got to do it." And we're like, "Andrew, you've never trained to do this. You don't have the right gear. You know, he didn't care. He didn't care. He put on the spandex shorts. He got out there and never trained, and he's riding along with them. And about a mile and a half down the road, we picked him up. He was huffing and puffing. But it didn't matter. That was Andrew. He wanted to be in it. He wanted to do everything. He wanted to experience everything, and he loved the vets. He loved our warriors.
I gotta figure Andrew's up there laughing at a lot of things right now, but particularly the legend of Andrew Breitbart, which seems to continue to grow. I loved going to sporting events with Andrew. We were big sports fans, going to Dodger games, Kings games. Just like so many now claim to have been at Kirk Gibson's home run or at the Miracle on Manchester. So many people claim to have been Andrew's best friend or part of the movement, mentored by the great Andrew Breitbart. And then there's others who ask, what was he really like? What was he really like, this mythical figure of Breitbart? And, for me, I just miss the man. I miss his wit. I miss his energy. I miss his friendship. Certainly his legacy speaks for itself. The tree of Andrew Breitbart really dominates center-right media today. I wake up every day trying to fight the good fight, having a different worldview than many in the culture, asking myself, well, what would Andrew do today? He was smarter than all of us, but he also loved his family, he loved his wife, he loved people. And I think many of us kind of forget that side of it. He was the happy warrior, and I wish I was more like that. I think we all could be more like that. He did have it in perspective. We miss you, Andrew. We miss you. We miss you.
10 years ago, we lost a titan of the conservative movement. Andrew Breitbart was a friend. He was the definition of a happy warrior, whose vigor and wit took the Tea Party movement to new heights. Andrew fearlessly spoke truth to power, and he was never afraid to call corruption and evil by its name. And in doing so, he gave a voice to a generation of conservatives who had been ignored or derided by the corrupt corporate media. Andrew Breitbart is irreplaceable, but his fight lives on through so many of the conservative victories we see today and each and every day. Today, Andrew's memory is a blessing, and I'm honored to stand with you and to help continue his fight for truth. May God bless his loved ones on this anniversary, and may God continue to bless the United States of America.
Andrew Breitbart was one of the most innovative and brilliant leaders in the conservative movement. It's hard to believe he's been gone for 10 years, but his influence lives on. He had that kind of impact upon all of us, and particularly the movement of conservatives who believed that this country was worth saving. He was way ahead of the game. We'll all miss him forever, but he's left an indelible imprint on our culture, our society, and our movement.
We are at the Go Proud Big Gay Party hosted by Andrew Breitbart. I think that this historic event was predated by last year's CPAC rejection of Ryan Sorba.
I'd like to condemn CPAC for bringing Go Pride to this event. Bring it.
And he was roundingly booed by the entire audience. It was a phenomenal moment, and I think that that was the entree to this very special evening.
I met Andrew in 1995, if you can believe that. He was a young staffer working for a conservative named Arianna Huffington at the time, and I was working on Capitol Hill. We had a lot of mutual friends, people that you've heard of before, Ann Coulter, Laura Ingraham, David Brock, and all at that time, all these people, including Arianna, were conservatives. And Andrew was the thinker. He was the one who was giving great advice and doing research, and he was really at the cutting edge. And I remember being so impressed with Andrew, even though he was just a young staffer. Fast forward over the years, Andrew Breitbart became a phenomenon. Within the conservative community, people recognized that he had amazing vision. He was somebody who, when the history books are written on the history of gay rights in America, in the Republican Party, Andrew Breitbart, a straight guy, is going to be a pivotal figure. He stood firm against conservatives who tried to push out gay conservatives. He stood against the cancel culture before we even knew it was the cancel culture. He was a true visionary, and he was my friend, and he will forever be missed by the conservative movement and by America.
Every generation has produced individuals who create, innovate, or conceive of new ideas for the benefit of society. When Andrew Breitbart started his website, he not only took on big media, he created a new platform which plays a crucial role in our world to this day. Andrew was a visionary, and he realized that news should not be controlled by the elites in New York. In 2022, we see the power of news and technology. We witness the horrors of big tech and media, both actively canceling conservative voices. Thanks to people like Andrew Breitbart, we have outlets that enable our voices to be heard. American conservatism is stronger because Andrew had a vision, and I hope it will remain that way for many years to come.
You know, the biggest misunderstanding, I think, today about Andrew, especially among young people who rightly revere him today, is that, you know, the media landscape that Andrew found when he arrived was very different from the landscape that we have today. There were not conservative alternatives on the internet. There was no place to go, or there were very few places to go to find any sort of presentation of the news that cut against the grain. It was still, the media landscape was still very highly monolithic. It was not all that different from when you know, Walter Cronkite was reading the news for an hour every evening. And I always find it amusing when people say, you know, talk about the good old days when Walter Cronkite you could just sit down and for an hour in the evening and listen to Walter Cronkite deliver the news, and you didn't have all of the other noise that goes on. And I'm like, you know, yeah, it was really a great time for Walter Cronkite. Or if you were somebody who believed in lockstep with everything that Walter Cronkite believed, which meant that half of the country, over half of the country, every day got screwed and silenced because if you didn't believe if you weren't in lockstep with the monolithic media, and you know, very few people had more to do with crashing that monolith than Andrew Breitbart. And obviously there were others, you know, Matt Drudge, for example. But the landscape we have today is so different than what it was 20 years ago. And when I think about, you know, how he did that, what was it about Andrew that allowed him to accomplish this? I think it was three things. The first thing was he was blazingly honest. I mean, just unflinchingly honest about everything. The second thing is that he was unwavering on the things that mattered, the principles. And that's why he went after Republicans more than he went after Democrats, I think, because it was when Republicans failed to keep up their values, keep up the principles, he would go after them. And then the final thing was he was utterly fearless. Andrew had no capacity for fear. And it's why he was so joyful when he would go after these people. And it's why 10 years after he's gone, we're still fighting the fight. It's a very different place than when he found it. And the left is still crying over how Andrew and Matt and people like Andrew tore down the monolithic media. They're having to suffer listening to our voices even 10 years after he's gone. Fight on. God bless him.
In life, you meet many people. Some are caring, compassionate, intelligent, focused, driven, and some people have all of those qualities. Andrew Breitbart was one. But in addition to those qualities, he had the balls to deliver. And deliver he did, for the ordinary American, for the man and woman who didn't think that anyone thought the way they did. At a time when the liberal media was predominant, he decided to create a conservative blog. And that blog reinforced all of the patriotism that those ordinary people felt. And on this 10-year anniversary of Andrew's death, we think of how much more he could have done if he had lived just a little bit longer. God bless.
It's hard to believe that it's been 10 years since Andrew's passing, but in that time, what began as big government, big journalism, this idea that he had to hold people accountable, has frankly turned into a movement. You think about the flourishing of media on the right. Everything that's happened, the podcasts, the shows, the networks, all of that can be traced back to what Andrew Breitbart had as a dream. And that legacy is something that so many people can only dream of. So, Andrew, today we honor you and we thank you for what you started and what has become of that movement and that idea to hold people accountable.
Do you even know what you're protesting? How much are you getting paid? You will be the last to find out you've been duped. Enjoy yourself. You don't even know why you're here. What are you here for?
I am here to stop the hate that Glenn Beck is promulgating.
Like what? One thing that he said that's hateful. One thing that he said that's hateful. One, not 100, one.
I'm not going to fall into your trap.
One, it's a trap. Truth is a trap.
It is so appropriate to have a tribute to Andrew, who is so far ahead of his day. The real lasting legacy, I think, is just beginning where, he said, culture leads, and we've got to get into the culture. That is the most important thing, and he saw that. It was a clarion call, and he saw that, and we're just starting to really do that. I miss him. I can't imagine how much farther we would be if Andrew were still with us today. But an appropriate tribute for a truly great patriot.
Hi, I'm U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn. In Andrew's CPAC speech in 2012, he made a really good observation. This was the height of the Occupy Wall Street time, and he came out and said, you've got two choices. One is America, and the other is Occupy. Now, those were very wise words and so applicable then, and today it kind of prepares us for what is in front of us as we see some of these same radicals and what they're doing in the streets of LA and other cities around the country. You've got two choices. You've got America and you have the socialist agenda. So with Andrew Breitbart, we thank him for this. We miss him. We continue to honor his memory, and we continue the fight to make certain that the choice is going to be America.
Andrew Breitbart was always ready to expose fraud and promote truth. He did it throughout his life. 11 years ago, Andrew came to the steps of the Wisconsin State Capitol to call out the union thugs. He declared that what we were doing was historic, and he pledged to defend any governor and lawmaker in America who was willing to do the important things we were doing in Wisconsin. He helped get the truth out around my state and across the country. Andrew knew that the mainstream media, driven by radical union bosses and the left-wing politicians, wanted to demonize the Tea Party movement for supporting our big, bold reforms. Instead, Andrew pointed out how polite and patriotic we were, even when faced with the classless protesters who occupied our state capitol for nearly a month.
That kind of support helped keep our legislative majorities on task to fix our fiscal and economic crisis through real reform. As Andrew said, the adults are back in charge. Today, we stand ready to expose fraud and promote truth, just like Andrew did.
Well, not only have I met Andrew Breitbart, been to his home, socialized with him, and was a good friend of his late father-in-law, the extraordinary Orson Bean, whom Andrew Breitbart credits with encouraging him to get into the field of social commentary. And I must say that publicly, I was kind of surprised when Andrew Breitbart came on my radio show years ago and told me that I inspired him into going into the field of commenting and criticizing on the media. Talk about a legacy that this man has left. I mean, his organization has just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and more influential. So, Andrew Breitbart is the gift that keeps on giving. I also am proud to say that the editor-in-chief of Andrew Breitbart, Mr. Marlowe, I gave him his first job in the conservative commentating field. He was an intern for one of my books. Extraordinary young man, and the organization plucked him out of, I think he was in his diapers when he first came to Breitbart, and now he's still there. I think he was their first employee. Anyway, Mr. Marlowe, thank you so much for your work in helping me make my book great. And thank you so much for your work in expanding the scope and influence of Breitbart. God bless.
So twice this week I thought about Andrew, and that was before I was asked to do this, or I was reminded that this was the 10-year anniversary of his passing. The first time I thought of Andrew was when I watched Senator Marco Rubio stand in the well of the Senate and just dismiss and ridicule and mock a year-long billion-dollar corporate media narrative about a Capitol protest being an insurrection. There's Marco Rubio, of all people, in the well of the Senate, using words like Speedos and buffalo horns to just laugh off all the work the media had put in to ginning up that narrative. And I thought of Andrew again when the Republican National Committee announced that they didn't want the presidential candidates to do business with the debate commission anymore. I mean, what a finger in the eye to the establishment and the media. And I'm telling you, none of that would have been possible without Andrew. It was Andrew who completely changed our way of thinking. Citizen warrior by citizen warrior, he's the one who changed our way of thinking about the media. It's time to stop seeking their favor, he told us. It's time to treat them with the contempt that they deserve. And most of all, it's time to stop complaining and build something, build our own media, build an infrastructure that is so strong at getting our own narratives out there, that is so able to tell the truth, that people like Marco Rubio and Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump and Rand Paul and the Republican National Committee know that they can stick their finger in the eye of the corporate media, and we got their back. Everything changed. Andrew changed everything. And 10 years later, his legacy, I think, is bigger than it was 10 years ago. And I think 20 years from now, it'll be even bigger. So while we miss him, and we wonder every day, at least I do, what he would be up to, anytime someone has the courage to do what Marco Rubio did, anytime someone shows contempt for the media that used to be so capable of intimidating and gaslighting and bribing us, that's Andrew. So God bless him, and I miss him, and I need to get a selfie stick.
What an honor to get to shout out Andrew Breitbart and share for you what he means to me and millions of others around the world. Remember, Andrew was the one who captured so firmly, so clearly this reality that everything is downstream from pop culture. Everything, politics, downstream from pop culture. The economy, the way we market things, the way we run our businesses, everything. What he was telling us, you guys, is that common sense constitutional conservatives, just patriots in this country, we've got to quit shying away from being a part of pop culture if we truly want to make a difference, okay? He said, get out there, what he was saying, infiltrate and influence pop culture if we want to make a difference, okay? And so we need to do that, you guys, in honor of him and in order to make this country and the world a better place. Get others to see the light, as Andrew did. get out there and be the salt and the light in the world. Andrew left me with that, along with so many, many, many other lessons. I mean, innumerable lessons. His brilliancy, oh my goodness. He's an icon, he's a hero. Thank you guys for honoring him. He deserves it. His family deserves it. Yeah, God bless you guys.
You waged war against the good American people, you progressives. You pit us against each other. We're going to come after you so hard. You have no idea what you have awoken in this country.
I'm American made. I got American parts. I got American faith. In America's heart, they say our reputation needs a new coat of paint and a delicate melody. But I say I like the bruises, 'cause a melody don't mean a thing if we don't have the strength to sing. And I won't be made to ever feel ashamed that I'm American made. I got American parts. I got American faith in America's heart. Go on, raise the flag. I got stars in my eyes. I'm in love with her, and I won't apologize. They say that we need changing, as if all the founding fathers seem to get it wrong. Oh, but I say that I still believe in the greatest innovator, liberator, cultivator, freedom knows. So I suggest you take a look inside. Man, I think you changed already. You went and lost your pride. But I'm American made. I got American parts. I got American faith in America's heart. Go on, raise the flag. I got